Hi, everyone. Welcome to the next episode of Help Wanted. My name is Bryant Chase. I'm CareerArc's Director of Social Media and the host of our new series, Help Wanted. So we came up with the name as a play on words because we know recruiters use the phrase in reference to open roles, and we also know the recruiting industry could use a helping hand. I mean, whether you need help finding candidates or help surviving this crazy industry, you need it now more than ever. And in this series, I'll introduce you to some really special helpers. We're going to chat about how their personal lives impact their professional lives and how that all ultimately circles back to benefiting the recruiting, talent acquisition, and employer brand specialists of the world. Hopefully the ones like you. Speaking of helpers, helping me behind the scenes is social media manager Marissa Gonzalez. She is smart, talented, hardworking, and an absolute pleasure to be around. And part of her job is reading through your comments. So on our inaugural episode last week, we spoke with Alyssa Joshua about her passionate work as an executive coach, and she's provided some amazing guidance for recruiters who are struggling with the demanding nature of the role. Be sure to check it out when you get a chance. Marissa, actually, can you drop the link in the comments for everyone? And speaking of comments, we are so glad you're here. So please let us know where you're watching and or listening from. I say listening because we encourage you to just listen to this while you work as well. You can kind of pretend like you're eavesdropping on neighbors in a cubicle. So our guest today is an athlete, a morning meditation leader, and an all-around great guy, Adam Lowe. Adam is the senior product manager for a tool that allows recruiters to automatically post their jobs to social media at scale. And we're going to chat with him about how he's elevated his performance in sports and work with great leadership, as well as how his respect for recruiters fuels his drive to create the most helpful tool possible. Adam, welcome to the show. Let me get you up here. And
there he is.
yeah, there you go. So take a moment to introduce yourself and tell everybody where you're joining from.
You got it. First of all, great to see you, and thanks for
Good to
having
see you
me.
too.
This is a really cool format. Love to participate, so very excited about that. Really cool. My name is Adam
We're happy
Lowe.
to have you.
Awesome. As you mentioned, I'm the senior product manager here at CareerArc. Shockingly, I've been here for almost 12 years. It's gone by really quickly, but amazing 12 years. Have had the pleasure of working with some really tremendous people. A great opportunity to be here and really love it. I am currently in Los Angeles. The time is running up. I'm about 5 weeks away from moving my beautiful wife, my two young daughters back to South Florida, where I was born and raised. And we're super excited about that. It will be a logistical nightmare, but we are ready to jump. So it's really cool.
Well, fortunately, you're not moving this week. For you guys watching, I am also a native Floridian. I live in LA now. I'm not moving back anytime soon, but my family is currently in Valdosta trying to escape the hurricane. I hope your family is safe with that coming in. I know it's hitting pretty heavy. So I wanted to talk to you because you have a cool backstory. You've been with CareerArc for 12 years, like you said. It's quite the journey, but I want to go even farther back because one of the things that got us started about the whole concept for this series was, comes from your childhood. So growing up in Florida and playing basketball. And I kind of wanted to hear, you had mentioned how your experience playing basketball at a young age kind of mirrored an experience here at CareerArc. So I wanted to share that story with us.
You got it. Well, yeah, athletics was my identity growing up. I had an older brother, 3 years older than me. And I kind of joked that he was going to get the first, 18 or 20 years of our lives being better than me. And then the balance of our lives, I will be better than him at all the sports that we played. So unfortunately, that early time was when it mattered. Now we're not really competing at a high level anymore. So, these years are kind of wasted. But 3 years difference was the perfect amount, I think, because he was close enough to, it wasn't out of my league in order of being able to compete. But close enough though to like pull me up and I had to perform at a really high level in everything. From Nerf basketball in the house all the way into the real sports that we played. So the story that you're referencing is that I think early on, he joined a basketball team and I was always tagging along. And so I went to one of his practices and I was just off to the side dribbling and shooting while they were practicing and during one of the breaks. the coach, I think, asked my mom, which like looking over, said, who's that? And what's his deal? How old is he? And can he play? And so I ended up participating on that team with my older brother. And that's just sort of how it went. The rest of my childhood was, being able to compete with him at that level. Was lucky enough to play soccer as an 8th grader on the varsity team because our school was so small that we could do that. So it's just a lot of examples of that over time, just being able to be pulled up into those levels. And it demands high performance, and you got to be able to hold your own there for sure. So that related to my professional career as well, and just being able to find mentors and opportunities that demanded high performance of me. Some of my favorite coaches and my favorite mentors have been folks that demand high performance from me. And I think that would be something that I would recommend to anyone in their professional careers, to try to find an environment and mentors that will challenge you to perform at a really high level. Because oftentimes you're capable of doing things that you might not think you are when you have the right support and the right expectations set for you.
Yeah, I mean, when you have a good coach, it really, really helps. I still hear my coach when I played tennis and played tennis growing up, and I can still hear him yelling at me like, "Move your feet, you have flat feet." And then I'm like, "Follow through," and I'm in my head like I can hear his screaming still 20 years later, and it's got me. But it pushes me to a better place, and it does, you always want to perform higher, and it can be exhausting without the right coaching or without the right, resources and stuff. But when you've got good examples like that ahead of you, it can be really fantastic.
And the support is paramount, right? Like you can't be pushed into an environment that you're not going to be successful in. So, that's a big part of it as well. So knowing yourself and what you're capable of, and then stretching continually over time is the way to do it for sure.
The other thing that I think is funny is, we do a lot of our content, we create a lot of our content for recruiters in the talent acquisition industry, but I'm on social all the time as director of social media, and I'll type in hashtags that are valuable on social media. But when I type in something like hashtag recruiters, one of the things that comes up is recruiters for sports teams. And that analogy, I think, is overlooked far too often. And the idea that, sports recruiters are building these teams. So when you look at, the Lakers, or when you look at the Dodgers or something like that, I'm using LA references, but when you look at those, you think, these teams are ultimately created by a whole complex source of things, but at the root of it is recruiters. And I think it's really important and fun to look at it in the same perspective for recruiters in the business space. Because they're the ones, building these teams. It's just interesting to think about.
Yeah, I think, one of the things that strikes me about that is the pressure that comes with it.
Yes.
Right. And you think about trying to put a Laker team together, what type of pressure you see it, what type of pressure that entails. If things don't go well, then, people pay for that. And so similarly in the recruiting industry right now, they're getting crushed, right? It's a really tough environment. And I've spent actually the last 6 months or so doing some additional research to help me in my job to understand that environment better.
Yeah.
Which has been really good. And I think I've had situations too where in my professional career where things are set up in a way sometimes that either there's not enough time, or in my world, scope of the project is too big, or I don't understand the problem well enough.
Yeah.
And it becomes really, really difficult to succeed in that environment. And I think similar things happen with recruiters. And there's no shortcut. There's no way to shortcut the human interaction that is required for recruiters to be successful. And as it relates to sports and in the recruiting field, it's just that there's so much opportunity for them to impact the organization that they work for.
Yeah.
That can't be overstated. And, for me too, as a product manager, I get to impact the product that we deliver to the market, which is huge. And so I find tremendous value in that for my work, on a day-to-day basis. And I think recruiters similarly, just how much of an impact they have with their organization, and not just with the teams that they're hiring for, but the bottom line, the ability for the company to succeed at a level where they're servicing their clients. And it's just, it can't be overstated how important that role is, and also how much pressure comes with that as well. So finding the right tools to facilitate that is extremely important.
Well, you mentioned something earlier too about, a guy I follow on LinkedIn, get a lot of great insight from, is Josh Bersin.
Correct.
And
Yeah.
Tell me about that a little bit more
Go
too.
ahead. Yeah, the anecdote. So I was doing some of the research was specific to Josh Bersin, industry analyst, was one of the keynote speakers recently at HR Tech. And an anecdote from some of the research that I read from him was really interesting. It just pointed out the value of the recruiter. There was a big executive that he was talking to in his research, trying to identify. They were obsessed with trying to identify what the common thread was for great hires. And they were looking at their background, their experience, their education, everything that they could try to come up with to determine, what is it? Because if we can figure that out, right, then we just have a steady pipeline of great talent coming into the organization.
Formula.
So like gold mine, right?
Yeah.
They weren't able to find anything except the one common thread that they found was a great recruiter. So they could tie it back to a great recruiter. And so the impact that a great recruiter can have on an organization is fantastic. And again, that can be the pipeline of great talent into your organization when they have the ability to, focus on the human part of their job and work that way, as opposed to managing tasks. And, it's just, there's so many things to do that you can get lost in some of that. So trying to streamline some of that out of the way.
Yeah, that's the deal. I mean, we talked last week about the burnout that recruiters are experiencing at a pretty astronomical scale. And Alyssa had some great feedback on how to kind of navigate that or take into consideration how you're feeling towards, your experience in the office and just in general. I feel like over the past few years, everybody's been dealing with burnout, but we just know it's hitting recruiters harder than ever. One of the things that we talked about as well is that human-centered approach is oftentimes the reason that recruiters get into the role. Like, we like people. It's fun to talk to people. It's fun to get to know people and how they would connect. And also it's great that we have recruiters in that space, because it's also hugely valuable for employer branding. I think this is something where people get to know who we are and how we work at the office. Like everybody, anybody who's coming on the Help Wanted series this season, you're going to meet the rest of CareerArc staff and realize how much we all get along and enjoy chatting with one another. But how should recruiters look at their jobs and determine the extent to which, there are roadblocks in their way from being able to do their job in a human-centric way? And you, as a senior product manager, you kind of understand from the product side, what needs to be in there and what doesn't and why. Can you tell us a little bit about your philosophy around that a bit?
Absolutely. One of the things, so again, doing a lot of exploration about why it's tough for recruiters right now. And some of that research was a little bit surprising. It showed that technology actually has less of an impact than they expected. Josh Bersin did a whole report on some of this, the human-centered approach. And what they found, which was even more critical than the technology that was being used, is creating an amazing brand so that people want to work for your company. That helps, right? And if you have brand recognition, that also helps as well. But there are ways to create that and talk about the value proposition that attracts that top talent to your organization, and a clear understanding of it, and trying to find those culture fits that you can't really identify on paper. And those are so that's the crux of it when it comes to automation. And you're never gonna just fully automate away from recruiting, right? It's impossible. Certain roles you might be able to, but the human approach to it is so vital. So for them to have the ability and have the time to spend with hiring managers and understanding what their true needs are, and that parallels my job as well. I can't just listen to feature requests come in, right? I need to understand what's really going on and have the time to dive into it and understand it at a different level, and then be able to solve problems in a right way that also fits with the entire product that we're building. And similarly for recruiters, you can't just fill a spot, right? You need to really understand what type of fit is required for that person to be successful in that role and really help the organization. And also then how does that affect the entire organization when you're bringing people in? And so that's a big part of it, I think. And recruiters need to be able to focus on that human-centered approach. So for me, one of the most important drivers of my work as a product manager here at CareerArc is to make sure that we are automating the right tasks for recruiters that reduce their workload and get out of the way so that they can do what they do best. And I'm sure what they enjoy most about their job, which is interacting with people and finding the right fits and being basically a talent specialist so that you can fill those spots and help your company be really, really successful. So like a talent advisor basically is one way to look at it. And so we're trying to build products that help facilitate that. You know, just quickly, automation and AI and all those things was a big focus of HR Tech, which was about a week and a half ago.
We had a bunch of people there
2 weeks ago. So that was a big part of it. And again, the tools are very, very important, but they have to all work together well, and they really have to truly help get out of the way so that recruiters can spend the time that they need to interact with humans, which is a highly important part of their job for sure.
Just getting back to what you love. And that's super helpful. I mean, I think about it from my own job, which is kind of adjacent, but very closely related to what they're doing. And we're just kind of excited to share our perspective with you today. Adam, thank you for sharing yours with the world and all these recruiters. Thank you for being a great part of our team. And we have got to wrap up here pretty soon because we're trying to make sure that these are nice and quick. But Marissa is going to drop both Adam and my contact information in the chat below. So if you all have questions from this, or you all have things that you'd like to comment on or you're interested about, please reach out to us. Send us an email, hit us up on LinkedIn. We love hearing from you. And I am thrilled to share next week's episode, because next week, same time, same place, we're talking with Arten Bogosian, CareerArc's Vice President of Engineering, to share his story of how he found his voice. It is introspective, it's inspiring, and it's genuinely helpful to all who are trying to be heard. So, Adam, thank you again for joining us. Everybody who came to view, thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next week. Bye, guys.
See ya.